Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby, where we hope to be informative and entertaining and help you keep your modeling mojo alive. Welcome back, listeners, to episode 6 of Plastic Model Mojo. Dave and I have a lengthy topic by our standards, and we're just going to get right down to business. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Mike. How are you doing?
This week needs to end. Work's been kind of a drag this week.
Yeah, you let work get in the way of your modeling. You need to reprioritize your life.
Well, hopefully I'll get my mojo out of the crapper here. It's not been too good the last. Well, I've had some interruptions.
Yeah,
but we'll get there.
Yep, I hear you. So, what modeling fluid are you drinking tonight?
I am taking the last pour out of this bottle of Four Roses small batch. Still there, but it will be gone after this recording session is done.
Well, so now that you've managed to get through a whole bottle, what's your impression?
I think it's good.
Yeah. How does it compare to Bullet as far as, sweetness, caramel notes, stuff like that?
I think it is a little sweeter. It's not as spicy. I don't think there's as much rye. I think I said that last time, but yeah, it's good. I wouldn't refuse it.
Well, good.
So it's almost gone. I got my glass here for this, and I got just about a half more after that. So should be about perfect.
Just enough to polish off a post-recording celebration, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And you, what are you enjoying tonight?
Well, actually, I had intended, since our friends from On the Bench Down Under were, thanks to you, enjoying some very fine Kentucky bourbon, I had intended to spotlight Australia by getting myself a can of Foster's, which you used to be able to find everywhere. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful at locating any, so my second choice was I am drinking a bottle of Wooden Cask Brewing Company Kentucky Farmhand American Wheat. This is a microbrewery from up in Newport, Kentucky. It's very close, as a matter of fact, to the Hofbrauhaus that I mentioned, restaurant and brewery that I mentioned an episode or two ago. As you know, I like wheat beers. This is a wheat beer. It's very smooth. Let's see, the alcohol's about just at 5%. I went to Total Wine and I went to their craft beer section, and they feature a lot of Kentucky and Indiana beers. So I picked this up. It's my first time having it, and I would definitely drink it again.
Well, I'll have to check it out, though. Well, that's a wheat beer, though.
Yes, it is.
I'll try
it. It's, of course, a little bit reminiscent of the Gumball Head without the hop on the front end. There's just a hint of hop to it, but not nearly the strength that you get in the Gumball Head. But I think you'd like it. I think you would find it an eminently drinkable beer.
Sounds like we're pretty well covered.
Yes, we're fluid ready.
Well, we've had a little bit of listener mail since the last episode.
Yeah,
some interesting things.
And I hear we've been rated on. Some people have been listening to my pleas and actually been rating us on iTunes and the other services as well.
Well, I saw the iTunes. I haven't looked too hard for the others yet, but yes, please, folks, keep doing it.
Yep.
We appreciate it.
Definitely.
All right. So listener mail. First up is Ian McCauley from Ottawa, Canada. And he tells us that after taking the recommendation from the guys at On the Bench and Scale Model Podcast, he's checked us out. and he's now through episode 3 as he's working his way through our extensive catalog of 5 episodes.
Yeah.
And Ian says that he's primarily an armor modeler with a penchant for World War II Soviet subjects and a growing interest in 72nd scale aircraft. Well,
right.
I feel like
he
I'm looking in the mirror, or maybe he's you. Did you write this?
I didn't. He is definitely our target demographic.
I guess at least mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yours too.
Oh yeah.
So, but he continues that the modeling fluids segment is dear to his heart, as he's a Scotch bourbon and rye aficionado.
Ooh.
Gets bonus points there for that.
Absolutely.
And then here's the best part for you. Okay. His spirit of choice is Anach single malt Scotch.
Oh yes. Yes, we will in future episodes. I can guarantee listeners that in future episodes, single malt scotches will be making frequent appearances.
All right, so you can have a go at the Anach.
All right, we'll have to try
that'll be what broke your wallet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, single malt's not cheap. It's not a cheap man's liquor, but God, is it good.
Well, he said that he had to ration himself on this one because Anach's not imported into Canada. So, I guess he's got to get it on the sly, or make a few trips down to Niagara Falls or Buffalo or something and pick that up.
Yeah.
We've got a email from Luis Diaz. He's saying hello from Florida. He's recently moved up from Puerto Rico, and basically says he's enjoying the podcast and to keep the modeling fluids flowing. So no worries there, Luis.
Yeah.
Cheers to you from Kentucky.
Amen. Amen. By the way, nice pronunciation of Puerto Rico. You did really good there.
I try.
Yeah.
There's a good one coming up.
Okay.
One from Facebook, Luftraum72 posted a picture of a bottle of Basil Hayden's last week or the week before, on Friday. I think it was on a Friday evening. He did that. I don't know who this person is other than their Facebook handle, but the Basil Hayden's was a fine choice, and we both let him know that, and he ended up agreeing. So that worked out well for him.
Yeah, Basil Hayden is a fine bourbon.
So this next mail, it's not exactly listener mail. It's from an email correspondence I had related to the last episode. In the show notes, I was trying to put in a source for the Waldron punch and die sets because I wasn't sure if they were still available, because Role Models was manufacturing those and selling those after Waldron kind of stopped independent business, and Role Models disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to the bottom of it, and I'm going to give this one a try. This is a French name. If it's the French pronunciation, it is Loïc Antillon. And if it's been Americanized, it's Anthian.
Okay.
Loïc Anthian. And Loïc, it operates a web store called Kit Links out of Sandy, Utah. And this is his second shot at this because he's the former owner of Great Models web store.
Okay.
And he is currently, I guess, producing and selling the Waldron punch and die sets. Because Kit Links acquired Role Models. So that's the link there.
Oh, okay.
So for the listeners out there who haven't perused these yet, these little punch and die sets are not inexpensive, but they're very, very useful.
Speaking of what you're working on, so what's on the bench? What's I know you said your Mojo had been a bit slowed lately, so tell me where you are.
I've done a little work on the base for the PT-76. I'm trying to get that done for this show coming up. And like we discussed last time, I don't really need to get it done. There's a lot of dust on my workbench.
That's not good.
No, it's not good at all. Had a big distraction most of last week. As you know, I have more than one hobby, and my other interest had me occupied for a long time last week and last weekend, and I haven't really. I've not touched anything since the last episode. Really, I'm ashamed.
Well, this podcast is here to get your mojo back, so that's what we're doing. Luckily, I haven't been in quite as much of a drought as you have. Um, I mentioned last episode that I had acquired a copy of the new Airfix Mig 17, and of course I could not resist tearing into it right away. Um, I've been building it fairly quickly for me. If listeners out there Google David Knight's KNIGHTS modeling blog, you'll find a blog that I've had for years, and I post building updates as well as a bunch of other stuff, building updates on it. So you can follow along and see. Plus, I'll send Mike some photos for the podcast Facebook page. But I'm to the point where I've got the fuselage together. The construction is moving along very nicely. The kit's been kind of, I won't say panned, but there have been back and forth about its quality compared to what people expected. I will say that I've been enjoying the build quite a lot. Uh, it's moving along, and I don't think I'm gonna find. I think I'm gonna be happy with it when it's done. So there has actually been some progress on that. My little Norwegian vignette was stalled awaiting some product, which I'll mention in the "What Broke Your Wallet" segment. But I've acquired what I needed now, and so that'll be moving forward relatively soon. Um, all in all, though, its modeling slowed down a little bit, but that's, I think, it's much to do with job and family and other stuff picking up a little bit. But hopefully, I can make some good progress, and we'll post some photos so people get to see where we are.
Well, what are they panning the MiG over?
That it wasn't issued by Edward or Arma or this is
Spoiled brat stuff.
this is an irritant to me. Modelers sometimes don't appreciate what they get. I've been modeling for 30, 40 years. I remember what the bad old days were like, and we are living in the golden time of modeling. And one downside of that is it's led to a tendency for people to complain rather than appreciate. And this Airfix kit isn't quite as good as the Edward Mig 15 or some of Arma's or Clearprop's latest releases. But it's a fine model. The engineering is fantastic. It goes together well. It looks like a MiG 17. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be happy with it when it's done. And if down the road Edward or somebody else issues another MiG 17 kit, I'll buy that and build it too. So yeah, sometimes I think we're not as appreciative as we should be.
Well, I'm glad you're liking it because you probably have a stack of them already.
Not yet, but as soon as I get this one done, I can guarantee you I'll be acquiring more.
Wish I had more to say on the benchtop status other than I got to get things going this weekend. So hopefully I'll turn it around. Yeah. If I do, I'll post some pictures and relieve my shame.
Yeah, well, all the listeners out there, get on the Facebook page and give Mike some encouragement to get his mojo back. He needs it. Harass him.
Or a good thrashing, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I got listener mail on the outline twice. So okay. That was some bad planning there. But I will use this as an opportunity to mention the upcoming Roscoe Turner chapter invitational in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Next weekend, right?
Not this coming weekend, but next weekend, March 7th. I have a vendor table. I'll be up there vending, and looking forward to it. I've been to that show a lot over the years. They do a great job.
I'll be squatting at the table, yucking it up with everybody.
That's right. Darn straight.
So it should be a good trip. Still don't know my arrangements, but it sounds like a lot of the clubs going up, and
They are. They are
I've
definitely.
not been to that show in a long, long time, so I'm looking forward to it.
It is a very good show. It's one of the better ones in the area year after year, and I enjoy the heck out of it.
So if anyone is in a commutable distance to Indianapolis on the 7th, have at it. I'm
Yeah,
going about 3 hours myself, that's an acceptable kind of day trip limit for me. So
yeah,
if it comes to that, we may go up early,
yeah.
but definitely going.
Well, definitely stop by the table and say hi. So, since you haven't been building as much as we would like, have you been buying anything? Has anything broken your wallet this month?
Not too bad. I did buy a hot wire foam cutter
Oh, good choice.
finally,
Yeah.
and I spent the extra $4 and got the Hot Wire Foam Factory's version
Oh, okay.
instead of the Chinese knockoff.
Yeah. Well, we'll be looking forward to a report at some point down the road about uh, using it and what you think of it.
Yeah, I get a little test drive already, but not too much.
Yeah.
I've got some foam on some upcoming projects here, so I'll let everybody know what's up with that. But no kits in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well,
And you?
I wish I could say the same. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. Um, well, what broke my wallet? Well, number one, as I mentioned earlier, I acquired through Brian at Scale Reproductions the some of the snow products made by AK for my little Norwegian vignette that I'm doing. So I really couldn't start the groundwork on that until I got those items, and through Brian's good offices, he was able to order it for me, and I got those in. They weren't cheap, but now I'm ready to start experimenting and see if I can pull off something that looks like snow. Um, oh, for our Norwegian listeners, and believe it or not, we have Norwegian listeners. It's the fifth biggest country that uh, in number of downloads for our podcast. So hi, all you Norwegians. Um, I've got a photograph that I found years ago that I'm going to put on the Facebook page for the podcast. And if anybody can in Norway can identify the vehicle, it's a civilian vehicle. If they can identify the vehicle in the picture, I would appreciate knowing, because I've always wanted to do something in a diorama with it, and but I first need to know exactly what the vehicle is.
I really thought you were going to ask what color the snow was.
Hey, I know from Frank Zappa, you don't eat the yellow snow.
That's right.
That's right. Uh, I did acquire a couple of kits. I got Edwards MiG 21 PF, which is the uh, mid version of the MiG 21 in the series that they've done, which was really kind of a hole for a modern MiG 21. Uh, as I said, the MiG 17 is a big favorite of mine. That's closely followed by the MiG 21. And so I've been very happy with what Edwards been releasing, and was hoping that they would do the PF and PFM, which are uh, the bridge between the early MiG 21Fs and then the later MFs and BISs. And they released it. It's a beautiful kit, like you would expect Edwards kits to be. And I'll it'll move up the list quickly to get built. Uh, if you're doing a Vietnam one, it's perfect for Vietnam. Plus, a bunch of other countries flew that version. So And I also picked up at Brian's the Airfix new tool Buccaneer, which is a honking big aircraft. Really one of the prettier airplanes that the British ever built, especially in the modern jet series. And it's been anxiously awaited. And now that it's out, I picked one up, and it looks pretty. It looks very nice. I know friend and listener to the podcast, Jim Bates, has started building his. So maybe I'll get him to see if he can post a few pictures for us. By the way, I heard a cork there, so I'm assuming we're
Yeah,
getting a little more of a pour.
the Four Roses bottle's empty now. My glass isn't, but the bottle is.
Well, that's good. That's good.
All right. So I
All
get to go to the store this weekend.
right.
I tend
Well,
not to keep a lot on hand because
yeah, that can be
gotta
bad.
gotta be responsible.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And with bourbon,
So
that can get expensive too.
yes, it can. So
Yeah.
I don't need a bourbon stash.
No, no, Lord knows.
It'd be nice, but that's a lot of money to tie up. More
Yep.
than models.
Oh yeah. People don't realize how easily you can tie up hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars in bourbon collecting.
We got a special segment tonight on American kit makers, and to give a little background on how this came about. Listeners to the other podcasts on the bench should remember recently, not the episode they just dropped this week, but I think the last one before that.
Yeah, it was.
They did an episode as they provided a rundown of the kit manufacturers worldwide with some commentary about quality and the types of kits, scales, that sort of thing. And Dave Goldfinch commented, well, when they got to the U.S. part of it, Dave commented that he'd be curious what our take would be on the current situation in the U.S. And their guest that night, I apologize, the name escapes me, but he's one of their regular in-house guests, had made the comment that it seemed the world's largest economy didn't seem to be a major player anymore, and it's probably a valid comment.
Oh, it's
It is a valid comment. And I emailed Dave, and as a courtesy, if he asked if we kind of ran with this as a kind of a tag along on this thread of kit manufacturers. So I've spent the last week or so digging into this a little bit and trying to get my head around what all is going on now and what had been going on. At a high level, generally speaking, the current U.S. makers are really heavy into nostalgia and pop culture and sci-fi. And they seem perfectly content leaving all these other players to cover all the real life historical subjects.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. When you first suggested this segment, I thought we were talking about a rundown of just the current U.S. manufacturers. And my first thought was that's going to be the shortest podcast episode we ever did, because you look back on it and it is amazing what was 30, 40, 50 years ago compared to what is now.
Well, it's not even that long. What was 16, 15 years ago
Mm-hmm.
or less? But going on 20, probably 15 to 18.
Yeah.
So that said, currently in the United States, there are about 7 or 8 manufacturers making injection molded plastic kits right now. And we'll miss some, and there's going to be some nuances we're not going to get right. This is kind of a very general discussion with some commentary. Those kit manufacturers, by my tally, are Minicraft, Glencoe, Atlantis, Mobius, Round 2, Williams Brothers, Revell, that's 7. And then very recently, Pacific Coast Models was around within the last 2 years. But
Yeah.
we'll get to that in a minute. So I'll crawl back up here. Minicraft, as far as historical subjects, is probably the biggest player coming out of the United States. But to give some background on where Minicraft has been, uh, in the 70s, they were the principal importer for Hasegawa's aircraft kits.
Yes, they were.
And then in the 80s and 90s, they were the importer for Academy. I remember the armor. I think there was other stuff as well.
Yeah, there was.
Um, Aircraft, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Don't know what else. I'm not real sure when their original tooling started, but I know most of what's marketed, if not all of it, under the Minicraft label now is original tooling.
Yep, it is.
It's not a brand I give a lot of looks to, because I primarily build 35th scale armor, and the Minicraft armor in this 80s and 90s time frame was all really early Academy stuff, which was really bad knockoffs of Tamiya.
Yeah.
For the most part. So
Well,
what are they up to these days?
Well, Minicraft does airliners. They're very big in the airliner market. They do have some. I'm hazy exactly. I know that Minicraft imported Academy kits and was their distributor here and other places. And I think there was actually co-production of some molds. The B-17s, the PBY kits in 72nd scale. But as far as currently producing manufacturers in historical subjects, Minicraft probably is the biggest volume U.S. one right now. A couple of years ago, they released a Mariner kit, which was much anticipated. So they are still cranking out molds of their own. But far cry from maybe what they were in the 80s and 90s, when they were starting to produce stuff on their own and bringing in the Academy stuff.
Next out of the currents is Glencoe, and Glencoe is almost all nostalgia.
Yeah.
Um, they make a lot of they've got Aurora's old 48 scale World War One kits.
Yeah.
They have the old ITC armor kits, and they have a lot of the Strombecker kits, which is a very old brand in the U.S. From the 50s and 60s, mostly in the Glencoe line. It's all the conceptual space stuff that you used to see,
Right.
like Popular Mechanics magazine. They've even got there were a couple of Disney concepts.
Yeah.
Maybe they were in film or not. I don't know. It's funny. There's a kit that Strombecker made that Glencoe boxes now, a space station satellite thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was researching this, I kind of chuckled because the original Strombecker boxing of this kit, along the side of the main part of the fuselage or body of this spacecraft, says U.S. Space Force.
They were way ahead of their time.
They were ahead of their time. Unfortunately, the Glencoe boxing has got a different decal set, but yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Well,
So
I
go ahead.
I don't think Glencoe has molded anything new in years and years and years. I couldn't tell you what their last original mold was.
I didn't know they had any.
Well, or last new mold, or anything that they have done that wasn't
Right.
one of those old ones. So yeah, these molds are incredibly durable, apparently, and they clean them up every once in a while and repop them and live off of them forever.
So next is a company called Atlantis, and again, they're into nostalgia and pop culture. they they've got some of Aurora's molds as well,
Yeah.
and some of the old Revell molds and some old Renwall. They've got a neat website, and I'm not real familiar. I'm familiar with some of these old kits, but I'm not. There's nothing new that Atlantis is not a brand I've bought from.
Yeah.
But if there's some old Aurora, you need to check them out if it's something you want to build instead of pay a lot of money for an original Aurora box kit as a collector's piece.
Right.
Um,
And again, a company that's not doing any new molding, just
um,
nostalgia stuff. And
I think that's right. We need to double check that. There's several of these like Atlantis that are doing new stuff, but
okay.
we'll get that. Well, the next one up, Mobius. Again, it's heavily on nostalgia and pop culture. They I believe I'm right in saying they have some old Aurora molds as well, and they've also, looking at their website, have done some new tool kits, but they're very Aurora like in
Hmm.
their design and in their art and their boxing.
Hmm.
So kind of play into that same kind of theme.
Now,
Uh,
are they the folks that ended up with the Aurora Monster kits, or was that Polar Lights or Round Two? One of those companies repopped some of the Aurora Monster kits, or at least ones that they could get access to the molds, but I don't remember which company it was.
that's possible. I'm going on memory. I don't have the website up in front of me, but I think yes, they've done the Aurora, and I think one of these, there's a Boris Karloff mummy, and I
Yeah,
don't know if it's an Aurora kit or it's one they've retooled in that same vein, and it's made to look like an Aurora kit to kind
yeah,
of fit in with the rest of the Aurora monsters. I have to a little more research. Again, high level. I'm not real sure.
yeah. Well, maybe our
But
listeners can tell us.
sure, yeah, that'd be great to send us a email or a Facebook post and set us straight. You mentioned round two. Round two is really interesting. Um, they're interesting because they're I don't umbrella company's not the right word. They are, because again, heavy into nostalgia, but Polar Lights actually is under their umbrella now, along with MPC, which is a kind of a classic American former maker. AMT is under the Round Two banner, and Lindbergh. So they've got a lot. They've got a lot of old tooling and a lot of history there. Um, Polar Lights is interesting that Round Two has. Polar Lights. The name Polar Lights is actually homage to
Aurora.
Aurora.
Yeah,
Um, so they've got a lot of the old Aurora kits that they've done, molding them new again off the old tooling.
yeah.
MPC historically is interesting because MPC on their own is primarily known for their automobiles or car kits.
Right. They also way back when were the co-distributor in the U.S. of Airfix kits.
Yes, I've got that in my notes here. They reboxed Airfix kits under a couple of different formats.
Yep.
The two most prolific ones were the Air Combat ones, which had like an extra sprue of crew figures in them
Mm-hmm.
that weren't in the Airfix kit, and then the Profile series, which
Yep.
was the Airfix kit with an expanded decal sheet for usually three
I
different schemes.
When I got hooked on 72nd scale models in my 72nd scale aircraft models in my teenage years, many of those builds were the Airfix MPC builds, the Profile series. I remember those boxes uh, just like it was yesterday.
My memory is that I built some of them as well, but because this kind of gets AMT and MPC together. In my childhood modeling days, I always associated white styrene with crappy kits.
And the MPC used a lot of white styrene.
Yes, and so did AMT, and so did Airfix. Now back to MPC, they were the first licensee for Star Wars,
Yes, they were.
and then we can move to AMT, which also mostly known for their automotive kits, trucks and fire trucks and vans and motorcycles and cars.
Yeah.
They were the first licensee for Star Trek.
Yeah, I built
because
the Star Trek, their
yeah,
original Star Trek
yeah, they built
Enterprise.
the Enterprise in the sky blue box.
Yep.
And finally, under round two is Limburg, who've made a gamut of subjects over the years with really no standouts.
Well,
Not that I know of. Now,
you know, I built some of their 72nd scale aircraft back in the day, and they were crude compared to Airfix even back then. So, yeah, it's a lot of early kits, but they did some unusual subjects that nobody else touched back then. And
I built their Kingfisher, and I remember I got the Kingfisher kit
yeah,
at the gift shop of the USS North Carolina,
yeah,
the
been
battleship
been there.
in Wilmington.
Yeah, I've seen the light show.
Now, they also did a 1/35 scale T-55 that I built,
I remember that kit.
rebuilt.
Yeah, rebuilt is more like it.
That came out pretty good, actually.
Yeah, well, for the time, while the kit had its faults, I mean, nobody else had done a T-55, which Lord knows why. Now there are so many T-55 kits, it's not funny. But yeah, I remember when theirs came out, it was a big deal among armor modelers.
So round two, they got a lot going on,
Yeah,
especially for the nostalgia and the sci-fi, because I think there's probably some modern licenses still in there for Star Trek. I'm not sure who has that. I don't know
uh,
if it's Mobius or one of the round two brand or Polar Lights. No, it's not Polar Lights.
I don't know who has that license now,
Well,
but yeah,
somebody set us straight.
yeah,
Uh, number 6 on the currents, William Brothers is still cranking out kits.
yeah,
Now it's
and
a small kind of hobby thing, and that's hard to believe.
yeah. They have some molds, and they have some molds of things that nobody else did, like a World Cruiser and a B-10, which now is going to be overtaken by the Azure From kit. But Boeing 247. And Williams Brothers apparently makes parts for radio controlled models like wheels and pilots and canopies. So it's kind of an interesting company from that respect. It kind of crosses boundaries. But yeah, there's some things that they made many years ago that nobody ever touched before or after.
Well, they're still at it.
Yeah.
Which that's good. Maybe the RC is their staple, and they're just doing the plastic kind of as a niche kind of thing, because like you said, a lot of those are the only ones out there.
Yeah, they are.
Number 7 on the currents list is Revell, which is kind of interesting.
Maybe 6.5.
Well, there's a lot of it's kind of a misnomer that they're gone completely.
Right.
They filed. The world listeners
company.
may not get this, but you're the barrister, so maybe you should be doing this. But they have filed a Chapter 11 bankruptcy versus a Chapter 7, and
Right.
the difference in U.S. bankruptcy law is a Chapter 11 is a restructuring that gives you some lender protection.
Yeah.
And a Chapter 7 is they chain the doors and they liquidate all your assets to pay everybody.
At the bottom line, that's basically it. And they had a German subsidiary, Revell Germany, which got once the bankruptcy was filed, got sold off to a German company. So Revell Germany is now separate from Revell, and I don't think I don't think, as far as the Chapter 11 goes, I think it's still ongoing, and there's not been, they haven't spun off. A lot of times with these Chapter 11 bankruptcies, you'll have a company that does a bunch of different things or has a bunch of different divisions. And one of the things that the bankruptcy trustee will do will take a look at, can I spin off some or all of these divisions? Can I sell them off and generate enough cash to resuscitate the remaining company to take it out of Chapter 11? And
Yeah.
that may be what ultimately happens with Revell, uh, uh, or it may just get some debtor in possession financing or some venture capital financing and emerge from bankruptcy having put itself on firmer financial footing. But they're kind of up in the air right now.
So, given the current situation, we can dig a little deeper into Revell historically. Just rolling back in time, it was Revell Monogram for a while, because Monogram and Revell being competitors for what, 40 years?
At least, yeah, they were the two big, over the
Exactly.
years, they emerged as the two big U.S. model manufacturers, and they were the two big competitors of each other. And then ultimately, like happened a lot in the '80s, I think, you saw consolidations take place, and they were brought under one company umbrella, the Revell Monogram, and
And they co-branded it for a number of years
yes,
just to
they
make the
did.
transition.
Yep.
And going back a little further, we'll go ahead and pick up Monogram as part of the Revell history. Principally 48 scale aircraft and 32nd scale armor was their primary, their primary niches there. Um, I mean, their 48 scale aircraft are, those are American classics, right? And
Oh yeah, Revell and Monogram are, 72nd scale came out of England. That was once a scale was established. Frog, Airfix, Matchbox, 72nd scale uh, took hold in England, but 48 scale really developed in the U.S. and Monogram and Revell, and then Hawk and Testers were the folks that fleshed out 48 scale aircraft for the American market. So all of the 48 scale models we have today um, kind of owe a debt back to those two American companies firmly establishing 48 scale as an aircraft scale.
now in the 70s with Monogram, a big, not sure what to call it, but a big blip on that radar would be for some of the 48 scale kits and almost all of the 32nd scale armor. They had partnered with the American modeler Shepard Payne and created these diorama uh,
Yeah.
pamphlets that were included in these kits that show
Oh
that
God.
what could be done with these things. And yeah, those, that brings back some memories there, and that's, for me, I know, and possibly for you too, those things went a long way to making you want to go to the next level
Yeah.
in modeling.
Absolutely. Uh, there are whole generations um, that of modelers that owe their start and their growth as modelers to Shep Payne and uh, those inspirational diorama booklets and such. It just the guy did some amazing stuff back at a time when all of the diorama
Yeah,
stuff wasn't just off the shelf. You did it
no, you had to do
yourself.
it all yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In fact, there's a Facebook page. Shep Payne died a year or two ago.
Yes.
By the way, I hear tell that his home was amazing. If you walked into it, that it was just full of militaria and just amazing. In addition to having many of his diorama pieces in it, but there's a Facebook page that's dedicated to keeping alive his memory and featuring many of those works of art that he did.
So with Revell, well, mostly under the monogram, I think this is right, but Aurora pops up again. Sometime in the late 70s or 80s. Was it Monogram did the glow in the dark monsters that were the old Aurora molds?
I believe so. I believe it was the Aurora molds kind of traveled everywhere, and
And they
when
got distributed. Yeah,
yeah,
they didn't go as a unit. They were all over the place.
yeah,
And they're all over the place now.
yeah, absolutely.
And from a subject matter, you have to think, well, they were way ahead of their time because that stuff's still popular and is still around.
Yeah. In fact, is kind of experiencing a resurgence as we have a generation of modelers who, are into Gundams and things like that. Sci-fi is a growing area again, and as part of that, there's a whole new generation of modelers who are discovering those monster kits and those early Aurora kits. So there, that's one of the reasons those molds can be repopped, is not just nostalgia for old geezers like us, but also
Oh,
there is
thanks.
there. I'm sorry, truth is truth. You know, but there's a whole generation of kids coming along who never experienced those in their childhood, but are seeing them for the first time and thinking, "Man, these are way cool."
They are cool.
Yeah,
I should build one, but I digress.
yeah,
Back to Revell. Two more details about Revell. In the 70s, Revell was the importer for Italeri,
yeah.
and then to the bane of a lot of contemporary modelers, Revell was heavy into what we call box scale.
So was Monogram to a lesser extent.
And to those who don't know to what we refer, box scale is, man, some accountant had to be involved.
Oh, there is no question. Somebody got a deal on boxes of a certain size.
Yes. So all the boxes were a certain size, and their overpack was all pre-calculated apparently, and any kit designed had to fit in a box of XYZ dimensions. And XYZ was the exact same no matter what the model was, whether it's a ship, an airplane, car, didn't matter. So that's kind of where this box scale term comes from. So you get ships at what, 1/585th scale or something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Airplanes at 1/160th, and then the next airplane comes out, and because the dimensions of the real aircraft are so much different, it might be 1/58th scale. I mean, just zero consistency in anything other than box size. Yeah, it was the bane of many modelers for whom scale is important. Guilty as charged.
Or consistency is important.
Yeah, yeah,
So finally, kind of in the gray, I'm going to mention Pacific Coast Models. They were
yeah,
also a distributor, but they churned out a few 32nd scale and 48 scale aircraft.
yeah.
Now,
A lot of it.
currently, they're not doing business to my knowledge, but it's interesting because Kit Links, who I mentioned in the listener mail, acquired Pacific Coast Models.
Yep. Well, you're
So,
luckily
so maybe I need to ask Loic,
no, no.
what's this?
I can fill you in on historical because
Okay,
uh,
go for it.
I happen to have at a national met the principal of Pacific Coast and sat around drinking beer with him in a seminar at an IPMS National, and I wish I could remember which one it was. Pacific Coast Models actually was an Italian car parts importer. The guy who ran it was an Italian car parts importer. And he would go over to Italy, and he had an interest in Italian subjects, not only cars, but aircraft and all of that stuff. Well, there were models that you never saw over here, made by small Italian manufacturers. So because he already had contacts in Italy, and because he was already shipping containers full of parts, Italian car parts, to California to service all the Ferraris and the Maseratis and such, he started importing these smaller Italian model manufacturers and started
Like who? Like Supermodel?
well, there's supermodel, but there are a bunch of small resin and
Oh, okay.
I'm
Not
trying
just
to think,
plastic.
not just plastic, but there was some plastic too. Um, and so he started a separate business as a model distributor, just bringing in those things out of Europe, mostly out of Italy itself, and distributing them. And became the if you had an interest in particularly World War II Italian aircraft, he was your go-to source for a lot of kits and decals and for books. Um, and then after a while, it grew to the point where, um, because of the success of the kit importing business, is he dipped his toe into manufacturing and started manufacturing. I think mostly 32nd scale, maybe some 48 scale.
Yeah, there's when I looked at like on scale mates, there was a lot of 32nd scale and a handful of 48.
48, right. Um, Started manufacturing kits. Now, he didn't do any of the manufacturing, it was all contracted out. And I don't know who was actually doing the manufacturing for him. Um, and then I think he may have passed away, and that's why Pacific. I don't know for sure. So if you're out there, I'm not killing you off if you're still alive. But for some reason, my memory sticks that he later passed away, and then that, of course, took the impetus out of Pacific Coast Models, and that's how they currently ended up in somebody else's hands. It was an interesting guy. I mean, it was really great to talk to him, and talking to him about the fact that he had this Italian car parts distributorship, and just having them, since he's bringing containers over anyway. There's all this cool stuff in Italy that we don't ever see or didn't ever see over here. This was all pre-internet, where you couldn't just order anything from any corner of the world. Um, and so
Well,
he brought,
it'll be interesting to see what happens to these toolings,
yeah,
because there's some really really nice 32nd scale manufacturers out there now in Asia, and I don't know how these compare. It's not my subject matter,
they
but
are nice kits. They are.
it'd
They
be
do
nice. It'd be nice to know if they're gonna. Does somebody have them? Is somebody still already making them under some some other label,
not as
or are they
far as
just?
not as far as I know. I don't know what
See,
happened.
I think they're sitting idle, because I saw the subjects, and it didn't seem like they were things I'd seen.
Yeah, and scale mates
From
will usually tell you
Kitty
if
Hawk or Trumpeter or somebody
right,
like that.
right, and I could see somebody picking those up and running with them, because they are really MC202, MC205, MC200, some very popular subjects, and as far as I know, nobody else does most of them in 32nd scale. So Um,
So
and yeah,
as we move on, that's I kind of put the Pacific Coast in there at the end of the currents because from my record, looks like 2018 is when they kind of folded up. So
yeah,
that wasn't that long ago.
no, it
So
was not.
now I'm going to move to what I'm calling high tide. This would be the late 80s through the first part of the 21st century here. Um, we've already talked about most of these, so we won't go back into them, but I'll mention them by name only. We have Revell, Monogram, MPC, AMT, Lindbergh, Minicraft, Williams Brothers, and then in that same time frame, Polar Lights and Glencoe kind of came on the scene, and then Testers started putting kits out on the Testers label, and Johan was actually a little older than that, but they were under their own brand then.
Yeah,
Accurate Miniatures and Classic Airframes. Now, at this during this span of years I'm talking about here, all of these companies existed under their own ownership.
yeah,
So that's been a big shift. Now, most of these we've talked about, so I'm going to jump straight to Testers. Testers, when expanded into kits outside of glue and paint and all that other stuff, um, they had picked up a lot of the old Hawk kits, which was 60s era, I think.
yeah.
Is that right? You
Yep,
tell me.
yep. It
You're
was.
older. You're older than me.
Thanks.
Got you back. So they were reissuing Hawk kits. And I think Ian on the bench mentioned this. The U2 kit was probably Hawk's most venerable kit ever, right?
Yeah, yep.
And that survives still, I think. But Testers, that's one of their more notable Reeboks or Testers branded kits. A little later, they became the importer for Italeri.
Yes, they did. And
Um,
were all throughout the 80s, maybe into the 90s.
yes, and there's some original tooling too. There was a stealth fighter that was mentioned on the bench, and I don't know what else was
Yeah.
original Testers tooling. But to kind of go down the Italeri rabbit hole, not a U.S. manufacturer, of course, but there's a lineage here that goes way back. Italeri acquired tooling from it was the American company was Peerless,
Yep.
and
Peerless
Peerless was
Max.
in partnership with a Japanese company called
Yep.
Max Model Company or Max Plastic Company, and Max tooled a lot of U.S. and British Commonwealth softskin vehicles, some field pieces, and a German RSO tractor. These kits were way ahead of their time because they survive and they're still being boxed today by Italeri.
Oh, yeah. That RSO is, I think that's probably been in Tulari's catalog constantly for 40 years.
So I think Peerless was probably the marketing side of this, and Max was the tooling part. Airfix even reboxed these kits at one time.
Yeah.
So Airfix had a few 135th scale armor, well, soft skin vehicle, which were these Peerless Max kits.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, now
that
they're getting back into 35th scale armor.
that's true. But
Yeah.
these kits were picked up by Italeri and then by Testers into the American market. So a long lineage there of some really classic tooling in those those Japanese Max Plastics or Max Modeling tool kits.
Yep.
Okay, here's one actually has a Kentucky tie-in.
All right.
Johan, and it is Johan. It's not Johan. It's
Right.
Johan.
Yep.
It's a contraction of the original owner's name, which was John Hanley. Johan.
Yep.
In their heyday in the 60s, they were a competitor with MPC and AMT for car kits, automotive kits.
Yep.
And they also made some clear plastic display cases that were available for like 72nd scale aircraft and some 24th and 25th scale automobiles.
I was going to say their big thing in both aircraft and car kits was having one kit from which you could build multiple versions. They
Okay.
call it 2-in-1 kits or 3-in-1 kits, where both in the car kit or the aircraft kit you could build a different subtype of the subject. That's kind of what Johan became famous for.
So here's the tie-in to our state of Kentucky. In 2000, Johan was purchased by Mr. Okie Spalding in Covington, Kentucky.
Really?
Yes, and there's been sporadic and limited manufacturing for a few years after that, but it's kind of not much happening anymore. But I thought that was really interesting.
That is.
So that's Johan.
I learned something new.
I did too. It was fun looking up all this stuff, even to the limited degree that I have.
Yeah.
From this high tide era, we have accurate miniatures, 48 scale aircraft, and I think they're notable because they were the biggest new tool and modernizer of U.S. manufacturers since Monogram.
Yeah.
They were contemporary with TriMaster, kind of same kind of time for 48 scale aircraft. And when they came on the scene, it was wow from everybody, right? Who was into 48 scale aircraft.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, competitive market, competing with Asian tooling and that sort of thing. They had a couple of ownerships before they finally sold out, I guess. So current status, I think, is Italeri has a few of their tools and Academy has a few of their tools.
Yep. The B-25 most notably Italeri. But yeah, and that's what you see with a lot of these companies when they go under, is the tooling is their one big asset, and other companies come in and pick and choose the stuff that either fills a hole in their catalog or is perceived as the most popular of the dead company's line, and they pick them up and sometimes clean up the mold, sometimes they don't, and just start reissuing them.
So finally, from this era is classic airframes, and I'm not sure when they came on the scene.
90s, I think.
So 48 scale mostly, is that right?
Almost, yes, almost exclusively 48 scale. In fact, maybe exclusively 48 scale.
Now there's kind of an unknown situation right now. There's no record of any sale or liquidation, just kind of inactive, kind of.
I think there's a story behind it. However, everything I've heard is rumor and speculation. So, being a good attorney, I am not going to commit rumor and speculation to a worldwide distributed podcast. But yeah, I can confirm that those molds have not reappeared elsewhere, and they may be the subject of some dispute.
There's always that, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely.
Don't owe people money. That's kind of the lesson, I would imagine.
Yeah, and of course that's hard to do in business. You got to get
sure.
You got to get capital in order to make product.
So finally, I've got what I call the pioneers and the lesser knowns. Lesser known mostly because they're before my time, primarily. Some of these are before your time too, Dave.
Thank you.
First on the list is not too far back. I remember a few, but Hawk and Testers picked them up, so we kind of talked about that. Strombecker, another early kit maker. Glencoe picked up a lot of that. And Aurora, and that's everywhere. There's a lot of people right now still making Aurora kits.
Yeah.
But there are two that are worth me. There were a lot more, actually. Not a lot more, maybe a half dozen, 8 maybe. But I picked out 2, and those were Palmer Plastics and Pyro. Yeah. Now, Palmer, this is skewed from my memory and what I see at model shows and the big stash clearing sales and secondhand kit vendors. Palmer's probably their most notable in our market were their line of 124 scale cannons and field guns.
Yeah.
and these were from World War One and earlier. I think that the latest, most modern field piece they made was a World War One French 75 millimeter cannon.
Yeah.
But and all the rest are muzzle loaders.
Yeah.
Napoleonic Civil War, 16th, 17th century stuff. Few of those were picked up by Lifelike and Encore over the years. They may still be available. They're not particularly good kits, especially now.
Yeah.
Now, for Palmer, another thing they were noted for in their time was they had a line of 32nd scale and 24 scale automobiles. And there's a lot of muscle cars from the 60s in there. And they have a pretty extensive line of pre-1976 Corvettes. So 75 and earlier in both scales. I don't know how good the kits are, but they did a bunch of Corvette kits. Pyro.
They did a little bit of everything. I mean,
They
Pyro
did.
wagons, stagecoaches, the World War One aircraft, a little bit of everything.
Now, in looking into it, two of their more notable lines was they also did a line of 32nd scale, what I'll call vintage automobiles, like pre 1930, and they also have a line of 1-to-1 scale early handguns, a lot of cap and ball and flintlock stuff, and then all the way up to like the Civil War, the Wild West, a Colt 45 Peacemaker was under the Pyro banner. So that's about all I got for U.S. manufacturers.
I think that covers them pretty well.
I think so. So anybody out there want to fill in a hole, send us an email, note us on Facebook, send us a message,
Absolutely.
and we'll amend our list. But yeah, I think in summary, a lot of nostalgia left in the American market, and they're leaving all the historical subjects to other people.
Well, we're going a bit long on this episode, so let's. What's your shout outs for the month?
My shout out for this month. Oh, that's a good question.
Okay,
I don't know if I have one.
Well, my shout out, I'm doing two of them. One is I mentioned I've been reorganizing my model room, which makes me go through all my stuff and realize things that I'd forgotten I have. And I had forgotten how much resin and aftermarket and decals I had from Roy at Barracuda Cows. I don't know if you've ever met Roy. He's out in California. He actually was a movie model maker, worked on some of the Star Wars stuff. And now he does a company called Barracuda Cows, and they do resin upgrades and decal sheets, and they're really good stuff. Resin can be real hit or miss, but Roy's stuff is top quality. So I wanted to he's out there on Facebook, and wanted to give him a little shout out. The other shout out is both IPMS USA and IPMS Canada. If you're not a member of the IPMS national organizations, you should be. They do a lot for the hobby and do a lot behind the scenes that people don't necessarily see. They also do produce two of the best modeling magazines out there in the Journal and RT. And, a lot of guys are members of their local clubs, but they aren't members of the national organization. And if you're not, give it a consideration. Go online, look up IPMS Canada and IPMS USA, and consider joining. It's well worth it.
I'll give a shout out and a heads up again to the IPMS Roscoe Turner in Indianapolis. There's a show coming up in about a week, and I'm sure they'd like everybody and their brother to show up if you're within a drivable distance to that show. So we'll see everybody there.
That means you got to get this episode out so that that they benefit from that shout out.
Well, I would like to get it out so we burn 2 hours at least of our time that we're paying for the month.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we probably ought to wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, Dave. So many kits, Dave.
So little time, Mike. You take care.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night.